Welcome to Producer's Toolbox. I'm your host, Carol Adrian, and we have a really special presentation which is going to come to you in two parts, one this month and one next month. This is for everybody out there with the urge to write. We are going to talk to some actual writers from different genres. We have a playwright, a writer of books, and a television writer. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what goes into each of those genres, like a particular thing that drew these friends of mine to it. And part two, please tune in next month for that. We're going to tell you how to get into that genre if you would like to get your feet wet there. So today we have Brian Storm, who is a writer of books. We have Brenden Dahl, who is a playwright, and my friend Gabe Castro, who is a television writer. So Gabe, how about if we start with you? What makes television writing a particular area of its own?
Yeah, so with television writing, or at least with my experience with it, it's very collaborative. So as opposed to like a book writing or sometimes playwriting, you might have people who are supporting and like adding to your work or like giving you feedback, critiquing, but it tends to be like one or a few people. With television writing, you're on a whole team. You're in a writer's room. You're working off other people's ideas. And it's kind of like this, almost like an improv environment when you're working in comedy, where you throw out an idea and someone goes, yes, and then you get this other idea to go with it. And you get to build and create something alongside other creatives. And it really works like a lot of those muscles that you don't get when you're just like alone writing those.
That is my personal favorite part of TV writing, is that collaboration and the presence of other human beings, as opposed to the singularity of books and stage. But now you write a number of different things. You've written comedy, you've written episodic TV. What kinds of stuff do you do, and what's your favorite?
That's a good question. I do write a lot. I write for television. I also write like articles and things like that. But I have had the most fun writing for like comedy, television, like episodic work, because that's just like a fun environment where you get to really try out some interesting things. But then I also really value like writing for TV if it's going to be like conversational like this, where we're kind of writing about learning with each other and we don't exactly know what we're saying. We don't exactly know what's going to happen, but we have a good idea of where to go. So it's very different experiences. So I wouldn't say I have a favorite. Exactly.
Now, were you one of these people who always just, I know a lot of writers just have to write. They've just always had that pull. Is that something that's familiar to you?
Yeah, I have been writing for forever. Whether or not it's good is a question, but I have always like had an urge to write in some degree. So in most things that I do, I take a lot of care for writing, and there are notebooks near my bed of just ideas that you have in the middle of the night where you have to like write them all down. And so, yeah, it definitely came from like this place of needing to release that, but also really honing in that skill too and learning from others so that you can say for a little bit that maybe it is good.
Now, I because I know you and I've actually taken one of your classes in the past, you are pretty proficient technically with the science of television. Is that something that makes a difference or helps in your writing?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have an understanding of like a production process or a television, like from all aspects of production, it makes you more informed about how you're presenting information. It allows you to really think for like how it's going to be presented instead of it just like living in your brain. It helps you also like communicate with the rest of the crew too. So you already have that in mind, like you know what is needed, you know what is expected, how much time things take, all the steps involved. So you can keep that in your head while you're also writing these pieces. And I feel like that elevates it because now you know what's possible and you can also help make it possible.
Now, I know you're a principal player at our local public access cable station PhillyCam. Is there anything in particular that we should look for of yours on PhillyCam?
On PhillyCam, yeah, I have a lot of regular programs, but my specific program that's not PhillyCam specific is a fun media literacy show from the horror lens called Ghouls Next Door. And we're what we call edutainment. So we're part film analysis where we kind of talk about a film, but we really talk more about like what it's trying to say, really dive into symbolism and all the factors of that film. But then the second part is actually like history or facts or psychology that might have influenced the topics of that film. So you can come in, have a really fun time. We dress up, we get really goofy, but we're also teaching you. And we provide like next steps because horror can be really traumatizing and sad. So we'll highlight some of the issues in our communities, in our world, and then provide next steps of like, here's how to help us not end up in an eco horror film. Instead, save the planet, things like that.
I find that a very palatable way to be educated about something when it's delivered with humor. So, and having seen your show, I know you guys do a wonderful job, and it is very hard to keep a straight face while listening. And you come out the other end with information you didn't have. So
Yes.
We're going to be really interested to hear how to get into that next month. But thank you, Gabe. Brenden's writing is very specific for the stage. And this is not like screenwriting. By the way, any budding screenwriters out there, you can go to On Demand on this channel and bring up, we did an entire episode on screenwriting called Your Awesome Screenplay. You can bring that up. So Brenden, what got you into playwriting and how is it different from like screenwriting?
Yes, so I'd always been interested in writing from a young age, but I'd also always been interested in theater and acting, and it wasn't until high school that I really started combining those. I think for me with acting, I was just really interested in storytelling, and I was really drawn to the collaborative, live, personal nature of theater as an art form, and I just started experimenting with writing some plays, took a few classes, and I had an opportunity to see a play put up at Temple University in high school, and that was an absolutely transformative experience for me. And from then on, I just really, I think what I love about playwriting specifically, and how I see it as different from screenwriting or other things, is there's a lot more emphasis on revising and creating a very, very perfect product. And then with that, it has multiple lives, ideally. It can be produced and reproduced and recontextualized, and different artists can bring their own backgrounds and experiences to it, which is really, really cool for me. I like to write plays that can be taken in a lot of different directions by the director, and I like to write plays that other people's artistry can inform and morph.
I was very fortunate in being able to attend, I guess, a table read of your play Absolution. And I have to tell you, I couldn't stop thinking about it for about a week or 10 days. That was
thank you.
Hella good piece of work there. And one thing that really impressed me was when I write something like, for TV or documentary, I have to direct, or I have to at least be one of the directors. But you were able to hand it over to another director. Was that hard to do, to let somebody else direct, or what was that feel?
I actually, that's vital to me. That's a vital part of the process, because when I approach things as a writer, I'm very so I write a lot of science fiction, I write a lot of genre work, and I'm very interested in world building and in kind of creating these complex narratives and stories. But in terms of the actual performance and presentation, I think that hearing other people interpret the work and bring new ideas to the work will only ever make it stronger. And especially when you're working in genre work like science fiction, I think I'm one person. I have one very specific set of views and opinions about the world. And when I'm working with someone who has some different ideas or some different opinions, and they bring that to the work, and it just adds complexity and it adds layers. And I learn so much more about my world, about the characters through the actors as well. And I think it for me it's why I keep coming back to playwriting specifically, because I love seeing things that I make gain a new life in someone else's hands.
I can actually relate to that. And also, you actually were, forgive me if I get the title wrong, but you were a playwright in residence for what was that particular residency?
Yes. So I did a lot of work with an organization called Philadelphia Young Playwrights, and I worked with them during high school as a student. They had a program for high school students really interested in playwriting to come and share work and revise with each other. And then they brought in Philly area actors to do readings. And then when I graduated high school, I decided to take a gap year before starting college due to COVID and a number of things. And I was talking with them. I was doing like an internship, and then I had a position as their social media manager. And then they offered me a position as the playwright in residence, where over the course of the year, I would develop a new play and then have a reading presentation of it with professional actors at the end of the year, and work with some mentors at the Philly Young Playwrights themselves. And then also do some teaching and working with some of the students there as well. So it was primarily a process for me to develop a piece of work over the course of the year, but it also ended up becoming. I just was doing a lot of work with them in social media and in teaching, and it became more than just that as well.
Wow, so that's kind of similar. You and Gabe are having a similar experience that's collaborative, which I really do love. But thanks. So we're going to come back to you, but we're going to talk to my good friend, Brian Storm, who is one of those solitary people, a book writer. Hey, Brian.
How you doing?
Talk a little bit about, now, do you have to go into a room alone? How does it work for you?
No, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but I do a lot of my writing at work because, I work. Yeah, I won't say where I work at, so I won't get in trouble. But I work someplace where there's a lot of downtime. So I'm sitting there. So instead of just wasting time playing games, I'll sit and type away, And it's cool because a lot of times I get to work early too. I'll drop my wife off to work and I'll go in maybe an hour early. So I had that whole hour just to sit there in silence and just be able to type away. Oh. So yeah, it works out great.
That is conducive to working. It's kind of like, okay, well, what else could I be doing? Work or writing? Yeah. But, now, Brian really has kind of a multifaceted thing going on. And I read his first book, which he is now revising 10 years later, but you're also recording an audiobook. I heard one chapter and I was crazed for more. So please get busy. Now, how's that going?
Slowly. It's taking a lot longer than expected. The actual recording part, I thought that I'm just going to be reading my book. But as I'm getting in there, I'm realizing, it's not sounding the same as if I'm speaking. So I'm going back, I'm actually revising my revisions. Oh. And I have to go back and change almost the whole book as I'm recording. But as I'm doing that, even though I have everything recorded now, I have to go back and edit it on the actual audio part. And it's a very tedious process. It's taken a long time, a lot longer than expected.
It's powerful stuff, though. I really would recommend it. Brian's book is The Struggle, right? By Brian Storm. It is available on Amazon. And it's a very powerful story about a huge change in somebody's life. And it sounded to me when I listened to that first chapter on audiobook, it wasn't that you were just reading it, you were reliving it, it felt like.
Yes. Wow. It felt like that while writing it. There was a lot of stories in there I didn't want to relive, but I felt like I needed to for other people to really hear the message that I'm trying to get out there.
It's strong. And I asked you recently if you had one book in you or you had more. And I was very happy to hear your answer. What was that?
I have plenty more. I have more ideas than I'm probably going to ever be able to do in life. I want to write kids' books. I want to write novels. I want to write other self-help books. I just have all these ideas, but I just can't find the time to do them all,
Uh-huh. Well, I was really drawn in. I'm a pretty voracious reader, but I also am kind of genre specific in a lot of ways. But when I first read The Struggle, I was like, oh my God, this is real. And also your audiobook was the first time I listened to an audiobook. I was always kind of impatient with that concept, but then I was like, whoa, I'm missing out. So I'm very glad to know you have many more books in you.
Yes.
Gabe, what else have you got going on? Or do you have a book in you? Do you feel like TV is the medium where you want to stay, or what's going on in your head for future?
Yeah, a lot of things. My show, Ghouls Next Door, is regular. So that's every week we have a new episode, which is insane. So it's a lot of research, a lot of doing that. But I also write scripts for short films, and we've made 4 short films. One, which is in the Philadelphia Latino Film Festival, I'm really excited about. And I have a bunch of other ones that I'm just like, I just need to sit down and write. But I'm also someone who does some work at work. But it helps out that I work at Philly Kim. But yeah, I write that. And then I also, like I said, write some articles for some local publishers like Cinespeak or Brenden Media. So it's like working those different angles and processes for writing. I'd say I just don't I haven't been able to do anything long form like a book. So great respect or like a whole play. Like that's a lot. I'm like, I got an episode. That's great for me. So props to you all for being able to do that. That's amazing.
Really. Brenden, when you are visualizing a play, how does it come to you as a package? Do you see it on the stage? I know with me, with writing for, my TV stuff, which is kind of a slightly fictionalized documentary, I hear the soundtrack when it comes into my head. That's how I know it's real. But how does it come to you? Does it tell itself to you as you work on it, or does it come as a clump?
So I always start with worlds and characters. I build out the world, and then I find the characters who inhabit that world. But in terms of how the play actually unfolds in plot and action, for me, I think Gabe was kind of talking about this too. I really do see it as an improvisation. I am putting these characters in a situation, and then I'll often write 4 or 5 different versions of the same scene, and I'll just let the characters show me what happens and just play it out. And then it just becomes a question of, okay, what makes it into the play? What do I like? What lands? And it changes. I'm a avid rewriter. I'm constantly tweaking and changing things. But I think for me, writing is most exciting when it is spontaneous and when it can go in any direction. So I don't like, I'll have an idea of something that probably should happen in this scene, but if I start to write it and it's not feeling right, I'll just go in a completely new direction with the characters and see where they take me and see what happens. And oftentimes that leads to the best writing because it's spontaneous, it's reactive, it's emotionally true. The more you plan, I feel like the harder it is to be present, and I like to be present in my writing.
I agree with you. Most of my writing really has to do with historical subjects and real people. And I thought, well, I'll try something fiction. I'll write a screenplay. Could not do it. I could not bring a story out of thin air. I was kind of disillusioned about that, but I thought that is a particular gift. Now, Brian, your story, the book that we're talking about right now, that's a true story. Do you also, do you ever do fiction?
Well, I've written a children's book that's fiction. It's a picture book called The Monkey on My Brother's Back. So that's the only fiction I did. But I did write a screenplay that's fiction too. It hasn't been produced. It's just kind of sitting on my hard drive doing nothing. But yeah, that was fun to do. I actually liked it because I was able to get creative with it. Unlike my memoir where I just wrote everything that actually happened, I didn't have to get very creative. But with the screenplay I wrote, I was able to get creative, and it was fun.
Do you get attached to the fictitious characters? Like if you have to kill somebody off, is that hard to do? That was a strange question. I'm sorry.
None of my characters died in my story, so I didn't have to. I don't know. But yeah, I think I got attached to some. I feel like some of the characters were pieces of myself that I put, like some of my personality in each character. So you don't want to kill them off. No, or even people I knew in real life. I based the characters off that, off people I knew in real life. So yeah, I wouldn't want to kill people I know.
Brenden, your play Absolution, you keep those characters on the edge throughout the length of the play. And it's a real balancing act. I know I was kind of leaning into my screen when I was watching it because you don't realize the amount of tension there. But how are you with your characters? Do you fall in love with them, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's hard because I write a lot of tortured characters. I write a lot of I'm very interested in writing about kind of shattered psyches, about these kind of unreliable narrators kind of working through really complex situations. So it's hard sometimes, especially when I put so much of myself or of people I know into the characters. It's hard to write those really intense, visceral, emotional scenes. I find myself matching the emotions of the scene that I'm writing if it's good, if it's working. So I would say definitely that it can be hard. You do grow attached to the characters. And I also I grow attached to the characters in the sense that I feel like I know them so well that if I write something that doesn't feel like something they do, I just know. If I write something, I'm like, no, Manny wouldn't do that. That's not him. And then I need to find what it is he would do. It's more of just a gut instinct at that point. I feel like I know this guy, so what would he do here? It wouldn't be what I would do. It wouldn't be what the other character would do. What would he do?
Do you also have a sense of the stage set for the optimal presentation of that work?
I do. I think it depends on the play. So coming from doing a lot of acting, I've done some directing as well too in theater. I definitely feel comfortable writing, plays, and goal is getting produced obviously at some point. So I try to write producible plays that not too many actors, reasonable sets, able to be seen on stage. But at the same time too, with a lot of my newer plays, I've been really trying to leave room for a lot of creativity and creation in the rehearsal room. With regards to design, I try to write very few stage directions. I try to let just the story and the characters speak for themselves, and then I trust directors and designers to build out the world around that. I think if the writing is strong enough, then you don't always need all of that theatricality written into the script. And I'm really interested in devised processes too, which is kind of a form of theater making where the actors create together by improvised movement, improvised scenes, and they create what works and add it to the script. So I try to write kind of frameworks for devised movement as well, if that's a possibility. Yeah.
I've never heard that term before, devised. What's that mean?
Yeah, the devised theater. Yeah, so it's theater that is made in a group. There's a lot of different kinds, but generally it's theater that is made in a group of actors and performers. In that moment, there are different versions that are made, and then a version is kept to be presented. And oftentimes you hear it used for movement. You hear about devised movement, but there's devised writing processes as well. Honestly, I would say a lot of what happens with different comedy sketch organizations Second City, UCB, even some of what happens on Saturday Night Live is a form of devised work. And writers groups like Gabe was talking about, it's a form of devised work. It's group creation. There's improv in there, there's performance in there, there's writing in there.
Is that ringing a bell with you, Gabe?
Yeah, absolutely. From my work writing for specifically for Mystery Science Theater 3000, we are just a bunch of us in a room just throwing some ideas at a wall, just kind of working through some of these things. And it's really kind of amazing to see like what comes from almost nothing.
That's how I really picture the writer's room at SNL, with a bunch of like smart people throwing ideas around the wall and then, grabbing on and building on them. I haven't had that experience myself, but I hope that's going to be included in my future. Wow. Brian, do you visualize? So you've already done a screenplay.
Yes.
Could you see it happening on a screen, in your mind's eye?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It didn't start like that. I just had like the basic idea at first, but I kind of just wung it as I was writing it. But as I saw it unfolding, I could definitely visualize it as I was writing it, though.
Wow. Well, thank you all, Gabe and Brenden and Brian. That's really interesting. And our slide at the end of the show is going to give you contact information for you guys. But more importantly, please join us for part 2 next month, when everybody's going to talk about how to get started in these various genres. So all you closet writers out there, get your note-taking ready, and we look forward to seeing you next month. And thank you so much for joining us on Producer's Toolbox.